Okay, I'll go ahead and get us started. I'm so glad to see people are joining us. I know this is a tricky time of year. People are away, but we just love this program that we just got started last month. So hi everyone. My name is Kim Porter. I'm the executive director of Be a Part of the Conversation. Welcome to Creative Recovery. This is the second in a series that I'll tell you more about in just a moment. If you're not familiar with our organization, we've been around for 10 years now, which we're so excited about. We are a nonprofit based out of, well, we're in Ardmore, coming to you from our office right now in Ardmore, but we're Montgomery County, Bucks County, Chester, Philadelphia, and Delaware counties. We are the areas that we serve. And this is what we used to look like back in the day, but we'll be back there soon, we hope. And thanks for joining us on Zoom. We were just talking about getting some workshops going in person. Oh, say hi to Judy Hirsch, everybody. She can't unmute or else we'll make weird noises at you. But Judy's our program director and she'll be helping me out tonight with anything that comes in the chat, any questions. We are recording just the presentation portion of tonight's program. So once our panelists are finished with their sharing, we're going to open it up to Q&A. At that time, we'll stop recording so that anything that might be private or personal, will just be between us on this Zoom meeting and it won't be recorded. But we are grateful to the panelists for being cool with this because I think it'll be helpful to have this. Part one was recorded. That was on June 28th, and that covered adventure, meaning like sports and activities, yoga, working with animals, cooking, and it was just awesome. So we have that recorded and loaded up so that you're welcome to watch that. Oh, yes, and please feel free to submit questions in the chat at any time, and we'll kind of queue them up and ask our presenters when we get to that part. I always like to remind folks that we have meetings taking place throughout the week, throughout the region, mostly on Zoom still, but we're starting to, some of the groups are kind of getting ready to move back into their original locations, but we're going to make sure that we always maintain an online presence now that we've acquired so many friends, through Zoom who are out of state. I'm sure like many other support groups, our parent support network has grown a lot. So we're going to make sure that we have that available online. But if you visit that link on our website, you'll find a lot of information about meetings throughout the area. And Judy's going to be putting stuff in the chat as we go through the evening, some of these links that I'm mentioning. We have a survey that does not, back when we were doing webinars, the survey would pop up. It doesn't pop up in this version, but you can take this survey just by going to convo.zone/survey. And that way you can tell us what you thought about this program, give us any feedback about what you'd like us to do in the future, and so on. We really love to hear from you. Coming up, as I mentioned, we have some workshops scheduled. These are in person. This one for yoga is actually going to be a hybrid. So I think she's capping it at 10 or 12 people. It says it when you go to this link, convo.zone/yoga. That's on July 21st. This came from the first program that we had 2 weeks ago with Ariel Ashford from Unity Recovery or Unity Yoga in Manayunk. So in person and virtual at the same time. We also have a workshop on cooking, and this is out at the Manor of Hope in Phoenixville. This is with Chef Andrew Deary, who was our panelist 2 weeks ago as well. And they have a beautiful, Judy and I got to tour this beautiful garden they have and a really wonderful kitchen. So participants will be able to visit the garden, pick some vegetables, and then prepare a meal together. And it will all be kind of through the lens of recovery. Same with yoga. And same with working with animals. So Dr. Caroline Tankl is going to be hosting, if there are only 10 spots available. By the way, all of these are free of charge, I should mention, although donations are encouraged for Unity Yoga and for Manor of Hope, which both have nonprofits. But Dr. Tankl and her husband, Mike Blanche, are going to be working with 10 folks at their property, Sullivan Stables, to talk about how working with animals can absolutely enhance and strengthen recovery. They're certainly used in therapy, equine therapy, And we talked a lot the last time about how dogs can really support somebody's recovery, service dogs, as well as just the joy of having a pet. We had a lot of great questions about that. And I think there probably were a few adoptions in the last 2 weeks after hearing from a couple of panelists we had. But basically, you'll learn about these programs and other things that we'll be posting on this page. This is where all the creative recovery stuff comes together. We've got the recording of that last program. We've got information about all these upcoming workshops. You'll be hearing about more to come tonight. And that is all that I have. So I'm going to now introduce you to our panelists. We are really sad that our friend Lisa Kelly couldn't join us. We were going to have a sixth person, Lisa Kelly, to talk about art. She's amazing. I know she wants to do a workshop with us, but something came up that's very important and she needed to deal with this evening. But thankfully, Eric Tankl is going to talk about his artistic side, which is has to do with photography. But he's going to hear from first from Barry Salop, and then Dan Bononis and Patrick Montgomery. They'll be talking about music. And then Eric will talk about writing and photography. And Ken will be talking about spirituality and mindfulness. So I'll stop sharing and ask Barry to get us started. If we can unmute.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Barry. I'm an addict and I'm an alcoholic as well, recovering since January of 2014. I appreciate being asked to participate here. It's being stuck in Zoom meetings for the past year and whatever it's been, 4 months, and in the house has been a challenge, so to speak, recovery wise, and music has been a savior for me from early on. So, I mean, just a little bit about myself. I believe I took, my first alcoholic steps before I could walk. I mean, and the reason I say that, my earliest memories as a kid are before I could walk, and they are of that fear, anxiety, that uncomfortable feeling in my own skin, being in a crib, and born very chaotic, abusive, alcoholic upbringing. Mother married 5 times, father 4 times, and each and every one of those parents and step parents were sick in one way or another with this disease, the disease of alcoholism, whatever it was, food, sex, gambling, the whole thing. So there was a lot of chaos and unhealthiness growing up. And with all of that, there was a lot of music. It was the late 60s, 70s, and fortunately, I discovered music in my isolation because the fear as a child, I discovered that if I stayed small, I used that as a protection. Small and angry was a protection for me. It worked as a child, but it didn't work too well as an adult. But I used music. I discovered that music became a healthy escape. Became a trance of sorts, but a healthy trance, something that was safe for me. And I've used that through the years. My brother and I both share this disease, and we both share the same love of music. And we also discovered a band back. I remember putting the needle on the record for the first time. There were records back then, which was Van Halen back in 1978. And both of our lives changed that day because we became not only Van Halen fans, but Eddie Van Halen fanatics. And what I mean by that is we follow them incessantly. We've been to 30 plus concerts every year we've gone since, the band's inception. And and that helped me as well. Having a hero, someone to look up to in music, and a connection, something to follow, was also a good, uh, somewhat of a distraction to all of the chaos and some of the things that were going on through my childhood and through the years. Getting into, and there were a lot of alcoholic and drug years through whatever. I'm 55 now, so let's fast forward to I got sober, and getting sober really opened some doors for me to take a look at that self-centered fear. And one of them was I was never really able to play music or sing. I do play guitar and I sing, not professional, but I was never able to do that in front of people without being intoxicated. So I was invited to perform without drugs and alcohol after getting sober, which brought out all kinds of defects of character. And it's been an exercise to practice doing those things without that the disease, which I've done. I started taking singing lessons, for example, from a pretty world famous singer from a band that I really looked up to through the years, which was a big step for me to sing in front of someone like that. I played, some open mic stuff and things that have really helped me practice getting out of my comfort zone. Because my disease wants me to stay small. It wants me to not be good enough. It wants me to be sick. About, through the last year and a half or whatever it's been with this COVID thing, being stuck at home and back into that, there's been some feelings of being that scared little kid again, and isolated and stuck at home, and permission to do that, which is, this thing that this disease that I have, wants that, don't go out, stay home, stay in the basement, do nothing, critique Netflix. But I've used that to practice and to do some things to remain healthy. And music has been, paramount in that. About 8 months ago, my brother was found dead in his car from a fentanyl overdose, which was devastating. He's been very sick with this thing for years and years and years, since we're kids, and jails, institutions. Just a battleship through the years with this illness, and so I had a pretty good down payment on that phone call. The grief, I thought, it helped with the shock, but it didn't help with the grief. And replacement behaviors, you're stuck in a basement, or I was stuck in a basement, and there's these things that creep in, eat unhealthy and don't exercise, and just things that started to creep up, because I missed the fellowship. I missed, Zoom meetings are great, don't get me wrong, we're connecting here, but there's not that connection. And music has given me that connection. Those replacement behaviors that I was using to avoid the feeling of losing my brother. And then, ironically enough, 3 weeks later, Eddie Van Halen died, which, again, was devastating. And, music, part of my prayer every day is I ask my higher power to reveal himself to me, whatever it is. And that happens frequently with music. You know, sometimes I'll be driving along and a song will come on the radio, and it will be, you know, something that connected with my brother, or connected me to, you know, I could throw on an 80s radio station or satellite station. And even though that was a tough part of my life, it connects me to periods, whether they were painful or not, and allows me to feel, you know. And it's a good exercise for me to not only feel, but to allow myself to feel and to go through whatever it is, pain, joy. You know, music brings me joy too. There's few things through my life that had brought me joy until I got sober, and I realized that music is one of them. You know, you mentioned animals, and you know, there's some other things too. Cooking, I cook for a living as well, but music overall has been life-saving for me, and I truly believe that it's helped get me through this pandemic, and it's helped me get through the grief of the loss of my brother as well. I have, and I'll close with this, I guess. I had given him a guitar, and my brother never held on to anything through his life. I mean, he was constantly rebuilding his life, either going to jail or getting out of jail or getting out of rehab, or, you know, whatever it was. You know, I don't think I need to explain, you know, the addiction and the consequences to anyone. But he had that guitar in the car with him. He kept that guitar for whatever reason, in the car that he died in. And I have the guitar, you know, as not only a reminder, but it's just a special piece of, you know, I mean, if there's higher power moments, I mean, that's one of them, you know, that I have that, you know, because there's part of him in that, you know, and, you know, that's only a little piece of what music means to me and how I use it in my life and my recovery.
Well, Barry, thank you. So sorry for your loss. And I thank God music's in your life, you know, that it's keeping you going. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Never know where the gifts are going to come from. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It was really beautiful. I'm going to turn it over to Dan. Dan Bonones, would you like to unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely.
Dan, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I'm so sorry. I meant to mention that Mike Blanche is on here as well, and Mike is very much the inspiration for this series, and so I just want to give him a shout out. And he's always welcome. He knows he's always welcome to unmute. Mike is our clinical advisor, so we're really grateful to have him with us too. But sorry to interrupt you, Dan.
No worries. I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint that I think might be helpful. Just give me 1 second here. Do you guys see that? I'm not seeing that. I don't know why.
We're seeing your email. There you go.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. Don't look at that.
It was from me. It was safe.
Okay. All right. Cool. So a little bit about myself before I get into what music therapy is. So my name's Dan Bonones. I'm a board certified music therapist. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in the state of Pennsylvania. And today I'm going to be talking about music therapy and how it connects with individuals in recovery, individuals with substance use disorder. So a little bit about me. I completed undergraduate and graduate training at Immaculata University, where I obviously was studying music therapy and counseling, but also did some training in addiction studies. I'm now working on my PhD at Temple University in music therapy, and I'm working on developing a model of meditative music psychotherapy for individuals with substance use disorder, and seeing how this impacts depression and anxiety for individuals with substance use disorder. And so that's a little bit about me. I've been working in the field as a music therapist with individuals with substance use disorder for about 8 or 9 years now. I primarily work at Onward Behavioral Health and Livingren Foundation in Bensalem. I also teach full-time at Immaculata University, where I'm teaching music therapy. So that's a little bit about me. So diving into things today, oftentimes people have misconceptions about what music therapy is. So I'd like to start to talk about what music therapy is not. So music therapy is not music education. When somebody is coming into a music therapy session, they're not there necessarily to learn how to play an instrument. Now, there might be some psychoeducation where they're learning about their recovery, but the idea is not necessarily that you're learning music per se. It's not meant for entertainment. Doesn't mean that we don't have fun in our sessions. I'd like to think that my groups are fun, but not necessarily the primary objective. Now, some people will say, music is my therapy. I hear people come into my groups all the time and say that music can be therapeutic. You're driving in the car with the windows down, blasting your favorite song when you're feeling angry. Absolutely, that's therapeutic, but it's not necessarily music therapy. So what is music therapy? So I'm going to give you the textbook definitions really quickly, and then I'll move into talking about how it can impact individuals with substance use disorder. So music therapy is the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish individualized goals within a therapeutic relationship by a credentialed professional who has completed an approved music therapy program, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot there. So what does this mean? Music therapy is a reflexive process where the therapist helps the client optimize their health using various facets of music therapy experiences and the relationships formed within there. So essentially what this is saying is that there's a trained clinician who's trained in music therapy who is using music as a means of recovery. We're using music to focus on non-musical goals. So like I was saying before, the clients are not there to learn to play an instrument. They're there to use music as a way to recover, as a way to optimize their health. As Barry was saying earlier, and thank you so much, Barry, for sharing your story. He said, I'm not really a musician. And I hear people often come into my group say, I'm not a musician and I'm just here for recovery. I just like to listen. And that's okay. The purpose of music therapy is not for music to be, it doesn't necessarily need to be aesthetically pleasing. People can come into groups and it can sound really awful. It can sound like a complete cacophony, and people can still benefit. It's more about the expression and connecting with specific goals. So to become a music therapist, you have to have a bachelor's degree. It's starting to lean towards master's preferred. You have to complete an intense curriculum of psychology, physiology, music, and integrating all of these things. And then there's several levels of clinical field work that you need to complete, including psychiatric care, which sometimes includes substance use disorder, which is, as I said, the primary population that I work with. So when music therapists are working with people, there's 5 domains of human functioning, I call them, that we try and address. So motor, physical, emotional, social, communicative, and cognitive. Now, these bottom 4 are primarily what we're working on when we're working with individuals with substance use disorder. I'd say the emotional and social pieces are really the biggest. Emotional because people in early recovery may be having a lot of psychological issues, whether it's anger, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, about what they're experiencing and what is going on with them. Obviously, the social piece, trying to avoid what I like to call the negative nouns, avoiding people, places, and things that aren't going to benefit their recovery. Communication can sometimes be a piece, and cognitive, thought processes, breaking through some cognitive distortions, breaking through some negative thought patterns that people have. These are things that we would work on when working with individuals with substance use disorder or people that are in early recovery. And so within music therapy, we're addressing one or some or all of those 5 areas that I just discussed in one of 4 ways. So there's recreative music, which would be there's an existing song, we bring it in with the client, and we work with the client to recreate this song. This can be a stepping stone for discussion. This could be a stepping stone for them to just express themselves in a different way. Self-expression is really a big part of any creative arts therapy, including music therapy. Receptive is the client is listening. This could be in the form of meditation. This could be in the form of the client says, this song really connects with my recovery. I want to listen to it and talk about the lyrics. Compositional can be in the form of we're writing a song together, whether it's we're writing lyrics down. This is what my recovery is like. These are the things that I'm struggling with. And the role of the therapist in all this is we're just simply a guide. We're taking what the clients are giving us. We're taking what the people that are coming to us, and we're helping them express themselves in a different way. We're helping connect them to their treatment areas. We're helping connect them to maintaining sobriety. We're helping them with relapse prevention. We're helping them gain insight. And then improvisation can be anything that's spontaneous music making. A lot of times when people think of improvisation, In music therapy, oftentimes it's drums, but if you have a musician, obviously, you can utilize any instruments that the person is proficient in. As I said, you don't need to be a musician to engage in music therapy. It's not the purpose. They say where words fail, music speaks. And me as a music therapist, I certainly believe that to be true. I've had people come to my group that say, I hate music. I don't listen to music because it reminds me of X, Y, and Z. And this is something that people can often work through in music therapy sessions. So how does music therapy aid in recovery clinical experiences? Music can be equally as triggering as it can be healing. So when somebody comes into a session, they may say, like I was just giving that example of somebody that might not want to listen to certain music because it reminds them of active use, or it reminds them of a certain memory that they're trying to avoid. Our goal is not to trigger people, but if somebody brings that up, this may be a song that we listen to in treatment to help them work through those triggers, to help them work through. Additionally, people, or we as therapists, will bring in songs and we'll dissect the lyrics. We'll talk about, how does this song connect with you in your recovery? How does this song connect with you in the process that you're in now? And really, the approach, the way that music therapists approach things depends on the level of care that somebody is in. So right now I work primarily in partial hospitalization as well as inpatient, but in the past I've worked in outpatient settings. I've worked in the community. I was down in Kensington and Allegheny at the Kensington storefront across from Prevention Point, anybody that's familiar with that area, and doing community music therapy outreach and seeing like, how do you connect with music and how can this help you with harm reduction, or how might this connect with you with just where you are in your life? How can this connect with you to improve your mood, even if it's only for 5 minutes? And so I was going to do an experiential, but I think I'm running out of time. So I'll just kind of share a little bit more. I'll share what I did today in a music therapy session. Today I was at Live and Grin Foundation, and a lot of people were saying, I feel like this is a long journey and this has been really, really difficult. And so thinking about this, I was like, okay, what's a song that could connect with this idea of a journey? Anybody that's familiar with Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band, or Metallica also covered this song. The song Turn the Page. And it's this idea of being on this long, lonesome highway. I mean, that's how the song starts, on a long, lonesome highway. And it's this idea of being up on stage, but still not being understood by people. And this is something that we're dissecting. So I came in and I played the song with the group. They talked about it. They talked about like, there's a lot of things that I feel like I need to put on a face for, or there's a lot of things that that I feel like it's just this long journey that I'm strung out and I don't know what to do about it because I'm constantly putting on this show, being on this stage. So that started the discussion. And then oftentimes I like to end my sessions with ideas of serenity and themes of serenity. And so a big song that I will use to complete my sessions is Let It Be by the Beatles. It's a very common song. A lot of people know that song. And this idea of letting it be, I think, connects with the idea of the Serenity Prayer. And anybody that is in recovery, I'm sure you've heard the Serenity Prayer 10, 100 million, bajillion times. But this idea of accepting the things that you can't change. You can't change the past. You have to let it be. So I'll often end with that song and have people discuss, what are things that you want to leave here in the room today? And then what do you want to take with you to leave this session for music therapy? And I'm out of time, so I'm going to wrap it up there.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm sorry that we couldn't give you more time because that was really interesting. I really appreciated hearing and learning about that. Thank you so much. Really interesting. And I'm sure we'll be getting back to you with Q&A. Patrick, would you like to unmute? There you go. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. Hey, everyone. I am Pam Montgomery. I am a recovery coordinator at the Manor of Hope in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. I am also in recovery from opiates. I was an opiate addict from 18 to 26 years old. And music, I believe, was a big part of my recovery. So I'm going to screen share. Let's see. Can everyone see that? Cool. So this is a practical guide to music in your recovery. The agenda for this brief presentation is I'll do, well, well, I kind of just introduced myself, but maybe I'll add a little bit more. And then getting started. So the idea of this is for any one of the participants in this video, if they had any questions about picking up a new instrument or getting into music in any way, hopefully this could influence you to take the next step into action. The next phase would be pushing through walls. As with any new skill, you're going to hit walls. And the end game goal for me with music is to connect to others. So about me, there I am. I'm 28 years old. I have my bachelor's in psychology from the University of Scranton. So as I said, I was an opiate addict for about 8 years. I was actually a resident at the Manor of Hope. I came here in 2019. So I just celebrated 2 years sober June 16th of this year. I've been playing guitar since I was 14. I also believe my depression started about that time. I think that my interest in music came as it was like my first coping mechanism for the depression. It was I don't know. I would listen to music, so like music, like I love bands like Metallica and anything in that genre. So like Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, Guns N' Roses, and I would kind of use that as a way to express myself, like the anger, frustration, confusion I was feeling, and it was a way to create goals and complete them, which would be like learning a new song or learning a riff that I thought was cool. So we'll move to getting started part 1, choosing an instrument. So it's okay to experiment. I would recommend, just so you know, that picture is actually me in 2004. I had started playing the trumpet in middle school, well, I guess grade school it's called, and I decided that I didn't like the trumpet, so I switched to the saxophone. And then after a little while, I decided I didn't like the saxophone, so I switched to the guitar. I stuck with that. But so I would try out different instruments. And I think a lot of people in this day and age would rather go on Amazon and just find an instrument that they think they'd be interested in and then order it. But I would definitely recommend going to check out the instrument, get a feel for it, hold it in your hands, see what it feels like to like strap a guitar over your shoulders, or like sitting down at a piano or sitting with drumsticks in your hands. It has a way of speaking to you, in my opinion, because as soon as I picked up the guitar, I knew that was something I wanted to play. I didn't feel that way with the saxophone or trumpet. I thought that maybe they'd grow on me, but they didn't. And then if finances are a bit of an issue, buying used instruments, especially for your first instrument, I would highly recommend it. And you'll end up loving it anyway, because it's the first instrument you ever owned, or the first one in a long time that you've owned. And also renting is a great option. I rented my trumpet from my grade school, and I rented the saxophone from like a mom and pop music store around me when I was growing up. Getting started part 2. If you were in the Zoom meeting last week, then you might remember Flash. He was in Matthew's presentation. He's one of his dogs. He's holding a music theory for beginners book that I poorly edited under his paw. So getting started part 2, setting your goal. I think for people in recovery, especially, it's important to set goals. And there's innumerable amount of goals that you can set with music. So I just labeled 2 basic ones, which would be like, are you trying to learn music theory? Are you trying to get into like the nitty gritty? Are you trying to be able to read music and understand how it works and the different tonalities? And I can go on forever. Or are you interested in covering songs? I picked up the guitar because I wanted to sound like the people that I looked up to in music. And I am now regretting not learning a lot of music theory when I was younger, but I'm trying to catch up now. A question I often also get would be, is YouTube sufficient, or should I get private lessons? Private lessons are really useful if you don't have a foundation. I mean, I think they're always useful, but if the budget's tight, then I would recommend getting private lessons if you can afford it, at least for the first few times, just to get a foundation going. YouTube is incredible, but it can be quite confusing if you're not exactly sure what you're looking for, or if you have a very specific problem and you need someone to tailor the lesson to you accordingly, which is why I would recommend a tutor if possible. YouTube also has things like backing tracks, so they might cut out the lead guitar in a song and you can play the lead guitarist part on your own with the rest of the band behind you, or they'll play a segment of the rhythm instruments during the guitar solo, and you can play the guitar solo yourself or make up your own one in that key, or get creative. You can also learn a lot of tips and tricks. There's a lot of I found a lot of serendipitous learning, like looking for something specific and finding out, usually not finding out that specific thing I was looking for, but learning one or two things that I didn't know that I didn't know. So that's something that's really cool from YouTube. And then of course you can learn theory too. There are a lot of very smart people on there that can help you with that. Pushing through the walls. Like with learning anything, there are a lot of walls to push through. And the first step in pushing through walls is to know that they're going to come. There's going to be a point when you pick up an instrument that you know nothing, but you will, if you dedicate your time to it, you will learn pretty quickly, and you'll be able to. I'll speak from a guitarist standpoint because that's the only knowledge I have with music. Would be you might not have to. You can change chords, fluently, or you don't have to look at your fingers where they are on the fretboard as much. And you might feel like you got this and you found something that you understand and you get it, and then you can cover your basic bands, like if you like Green Day or Nirvana, and you can play some of their songs, and then all of a sudden you try doing a Metallica song and you just hit a wall, and that's okay, because you'll run into that in recovery too, where you think that all there is to know. Like it's a well-known rookie mistake that they talk about a lot in AA. So it's okay to backtrack a little bit and reevaluate where you're actually at, and refresh yourself with some of the more beginner steps, and go slowly. And also it's good to set new goals when you hit a wall. The smaller the better. I constantly hit walls, and sometimes the simplest thing, like learning like a fancy new scale, like I like the harmonic minor scale, which has it's like a gypsy jazz kind of sound to it, and I think it sounds really cool, and it's something I wouldn't normally play, but I learned it because, one, it wasn't that hard, and two, I'd hit a wall, so now it's just something I can add to my repertoire when I play along to a backing track. Simple song from start to finish. There are so many simple songs, and if you just type in simple songs on guitar on YouTube, you'll find just an endless list of them. Just to get that sense of completion and accomplishment, I love to listen to a song on YouTube and then try to learn it by ear, instead of looking at the tablature or the notes online, because it's super engaging and it makes me feel creative. And if I don't get every little idiosyncrasy correct, then I kind of made the song my own in a way, because now I play in a unique way. And then adjusting the practice schedule. If you are an addict like me, we are known for getting by on our natural ability as long as possible with putting the least amount of work in. At least I am. And I did that with music. So I wouldn't practice a lot, and I would just try to slide by my natural ability, and I would hit walls when my natural ability couldn't take me any further. And that was a big ego check for me. And it is with everything in life, because I always try to skate by. Yeah. So adjusting the practice schedule, get real with yourself, and either practice more, or sometimes it's okay to put the guitar down for a few days and just take a break, and then come back and come back fresh. It's hard to learn more if you're at capacity for learning. It's exhausting, and your frustration tolerance might be a little lower than it is normally. And then getting help from a tutor, like a mentor or a friend, maybe someone that has more experience than you. The goal for this whole presentation for me was to help people connect with others. That's what helped me most in my recovery. I have two pictures here. The one on the bottom left, at least on my screen, it's on the bottom left, is me playing at the Manor of Hope's fundraiser in front of a few hundred people with some guys that I met in the house. And then the other one is me playing at an open mic night with a few guys. So you can take some classes. I don't know offhand which classes they offer, but I have seen advertisements for like group guitar learning sessions where a bunch of beginners come in and they all learn from scratch together in a room with one instructor. Open mic nights are great. Even if you're not playing on stage, you can meet fellow musicians. I think it's super useful to play with other people that know more than you, because you can learn a lot from them. You can pick up their good habits, and they can help point out some of your bad habits. And then you also want to keep up with them. So that's at least how it was for me. I always wanted to keep up with my friends who were better than me, which made me better too. Cover songs with friends. Even if you're on the same level, you can pick a few simple songs and just play and adjust the pace accordingly. I actually found my first band when I was like 16 through social media. It was a Long Island musicians page, and we just got together. We found a mutual band that we liked, and we just covered a bunch of their songs together in one of the guys' garages. I know Meetup, the app Meetup, also does things like that for musicians. And then Vamper app. I haven't used Vamper myself, but you can find musicians on it that you can play with, and it just like it categorizes you by what bands you like and what styles of music you play. And then the last part is questions. And I don't know how to stop sharing. There we go.
You got it. Wow, thank you, Pat. And I'm going to actually ask people to hold their questions until we hear from Eric and Ken. But that was really great. And Pat, thank you so much. And Judy actually had a great question that you answered at the end there, like how does somebody get connected? So sharing that info, I'm going to definitely put that on the follow-up page, like the Meetup and Vamper and that stuff. But if you have any specific links to like a Facebook group or anything like that, that would be, that people could find, and I don't know, any kind of resources that any of our presenters have, please share them either in the chat or through an email to me, and I'll get them on that follow-up page. We really,
awesome. Yeah, I can do
our
that.
goal in all of this is to do exactly what your goal was, Pat, is to like connect people to all this kind of stuff. Like they want to try this, they want to try that, whatever it is. Connection is huge. So yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks so much. All right, Eric Tankl, you're up.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see everyone tonight. And thank you for the people that shared before. Patrick, I just bought a banjo, and I will have to talk. I have no idea how to play the banjo, but I felt inspired. So thank you. I really appreciate everything you shared. But yeah, so my name's Eric Tankl. I am a therapist, mental health therapist in private practice. I also run the morning intensive outpatient program over at Ethos Treatment. Shout out to Mike Blanche there. And I'm also a person in recovery. So my sobriety date is October 19th, 2006. I was an early victim of the opioid epidemic, and went through that progression from kind of experimenting with marijuana and alcohol to trying some pills to finding myself really banged up on some bad things, and was very blessed to have an opportunity to go through treatment. I went through treatment at right before my 21st birthday, and have been sober ever since. So I guess I'm going to start. I'll kind of start with a bit of an overview. So tonight I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about photography and writing. In my experience, the needs of a person in recovery are very similar to the needs of all human beings. I believe that we all really need that human connection, which Pat, you touched on really well, and we need like a sense of purpose. For me, I mean, starting out with talking a little bit about photography, I really love photography because it shifted. Becoming a photographer shifted my entire perception of the world. When I first started, it was so hard to kind of frame a composition through the lens and try to capture the beauty of what I was seeing. Because it's really funny. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but when you hold up a camera and try to capture an image, so often it does not come out the way that you see it. It takes an incredible amount of mindfulness and strategy to try to capture things in the way that you want to capture them with the camera. So what I found when I first started taking pictures, I would constantly be scanning the world for compositions, like just looking for what would create a beautiful picture. And it's almost like for me, I have my own eyes, and then I also have this other set of eyes, which is like a 14 millimeter lens, a 35 millimeter lens, a 50 millimeter lens. So it's almost like as I grew in my photographic skills, it just created this new connection between me and the world. The other thing that photography did for me was it created a connection between me and an entire community. The cool thing about weird hobbies like taking pictures is there are a lot of people out there who really want to find other people to take pictures with. Also, in recovery, and you guys all know this person, but in recovery, there are so many people who get sober and become obsessed with photography, who invite you to their photo Instagram or their photo Facebook page, because there really is something so satisfying. It's almost a high to be able to create something, to be able to take your mind and your eye and a strange device and to capture something special. It can, when you get the really cool shots, it can actually be like intoxicating, and it's really fun to do with friends. So my experience with photo early on, and my relationship with photography has evolved a lot over the years, but it started out as me going on adventures with my friends. I'm gonna do a how do I do this? Okay, share my screen. Can all you guys see that? So we're gonna knock through some photos real quick here. For instance, this, and maybe I'll just go through a couple of these. So this is my friend Dean. He happens to have the best hair of any man that I've ever met. He's a beautiful model, and we ride motorcycles together. Oh, Fox, not the chew toy now, please. But we ride motorcycles together, and one day we went out and went for a motorcycle ride, found a cool field, and just took some pictures together. He's also a photographer, and this was just an evening motorcycle ride that turned into an opportunity to capture some really cool images. This is another one of my beautiful models and best friends. This is Hayden Briggs, who's in the room right now. Really, photography for me, I'm not a professional photographer. It's strictly a hobby. I use it to document my experiences, to document my life. And Hayden and I were on a walk in the woods with my dog, Michael J. Fox. I think the kid, his dog might have been there too. And we stumbled upon an abandoned house, and he posed with he gave me the dreamy eyes. Let's see here. Oh. Also, great opportunity to take pictures of your family. This is a picture of my mother and my father and my brother Ethan, and also Buck, who's now 14 years old. Here's my dog, my dog riding in a sidecar with his goggles on. Now this is where really cool things can happen. So I always carry a camera with me. On this particular day, some friends and I we decided we were going to go to Lancaster just to kind of like go for a drive and see what we could find. And we stumbled upon these Amish boys that were walking down the street. And often Amish folks really don't want their picture taken. I talked to these boys, and they said, "Sure, you can take our picture." I did have, it was a giant old film camera from the 1960s, a medium format film camera, so that might have been why it looked ancient. So maybe that's why they were okay with it. But this is the kind of thing, like having an opportunity to see something out there in the wild and go, I want to capture this. I have this sense for abandoned places. I'm always keeping my eye out for cool things to see. This is an abandoned subway tunnel underneath Spring Garden Street in Philadelphia. Went for a walk down there with some friends this past year. A strange abandoned power plant in Philadelphia, the Divine Lorraine Hotel, which has now been completely renovated. This is a friend of mine, once again, just going out. Let's go out for an adventure, and take some cool pictures of friends. My friend Scotty, who is the greatest juxtaposition. He's the sweetest, most gentle person that I know, but is very intimidating looking. He's one of my favorite models of all time. So that's just running through some photos. This is a cool one. There's a barn in North Philadelphia where people in urban Philadelphia tend to. I think they have like 40 some horses there. And went out with some friends who were in a rap troupe, Pat and Tom, and they allowed us at this place to hang out with some of their horses. So, and this is a pink dune buggy that I rented in Greece. But so that's, how do I stop sharing? Okay, so that is a little bit of my kind of just document everything, try to develop a relationship with a camera, and then another camera, and then another camera, and see what you can do. But through my photography stuff, I have created so many incredible relationships with other people who are into that hobby, both within and outside of recovery. I'm a person, I work in the field. I've been in recovery for a long time. I would say that the majority of my relationships of my closest relationships are probably in recovery. But through things like photography, I've been able to cultivate like these deep, profound relationships with people who are, not recovery people. And for me, I like to have a diverse, always have as diverse a group of people around me as I possibly can. And photography has been a vehicle for me in accomplishing that. Yeah, that's And I guess I'll lead right into the writing stuff. So Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about flow states. I don't know if anybody's read like that book Outliers, rule of 10,000 hours. If you devote 10,000 hours to something, you can become a master of it. I did not calculate how many hours I've taken pictures before this presentation, but it's definitely, there's probably thousands of them. But basically, for me, creative endeavors allow me, like I said, to connect with other people, but they also allow me to connect with myself. Writing in particular is such an experience for me of like looking inwardly, of accessing that kind of playful inner child and that like really creative part of myself, like the part of myself that is not, I didn't make it. I was born with it. I am a conduit of it. It is not mine. But writing and photography too, I find that it slows me down, and it brings me to a place inside myself where I can discover things and process things in a way that I cannot in any other. I mean, maybe therapy can do that for me too, maybe. But basically, and in terms of therapy, there's a therapeutic kind of concept. I'm not sure if it'd be considered a modality, but it's narrative therapy. And basically, one of the cool concepts in narrative therapy is that by kind of creating our timeline, like really zooming out and understanding our personal narratives, we can contextualize everything about ourselves. We can really look and look at our stories and understand like why we behave the way that we do. Where did my gifts come from? Where did my liabilities come from? And it's this really beautiful process, because if I didn't understand my narrative, if I didn't understand the implications of all the things that I've gone through in my life, I would have so much shame. You know what I mean? Because I would be like, why am I so messed up in so many ways? Because I've really done work, and a lot of this was through writing. I spent about 10 years writing a memoir, and very few people have seen it. But it was one of the most therapeutic, cathartic processes that I gave myself an opportunity to go through. And I'm going to be doing a little workshop at some point for Kim, and be a part of the conversation in the future. But I really wanted to kind of center on this. And basically, for me, there are certain themes that I'm just stuck on, things that I think about, things that I went through, whatever experiences, or all of this stuff. And I find myself having a very kind of like backward orientation, looking back at my life. And for me, in order to kind of turn around and have more of a forward orientation, I got to reconcile a lot of the stuff back there. And for me, writing is one of my greatest tools for doing that. And I through my addiction and life, I lost a lot of people, lost some dear friends. And one of the things that I do today is I really enjoy writing short stories, especially spooky ones. And one of the things that I always do in my short stories is I will put the people who I've loved and lost as characters into my stories, and it just to kind of honor them. And I kind of I will really try to kind of project their personalities right into these characters and just see what happens. And whenever I'll have a loose concept around a short story or something, and I'll start writing it, and I do not know exactly where it's going to go. But the beauty of that kind of fiction process is that all of a sudden, once again, I'm just a conduit to the story, and these beautiful and amazing things happen. And once again, one of the most beautiful experiences that I can have, besides being intimately connected, vulnerably connected to other human beings, is through any act of creation. And that's my whole jam. So I guess that's what's my time looking like. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks. I think the writing thing, man, yeah, there's so much there that I could talk about as well. Yep. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. I want to keep us moving because I want to make sure we have time for questions. Thank you. Ken, would you like to unmute and join us? Thank you.
So Kim and Judy and Mike, thanks for inviting me, and just really have found what people have been sharing so far so enriching. So thank you to my fellow co-presenters. Let's give you a little bit of background on me. I'm a licensed social worker, been in the field a couple of years. I do outpatient psychotherapy for individuals, couples, and families out of Revive Wellness in Conshohocken, a practice I'm part of here. Also been an ordained minister since 1998 in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. And if you don't know what that is, it's a progressive non-creedal tradition. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, well, hopefully what I will share with you today as I go through will give you a little bit more sense of the flavor of Unitarian Universalism. I like to refer to myself as a Jew, you, boo. And that stands for Jewish, grew up in Judaism, kind of mostly secular, but a little religious, a little spiritual as well too. Unitarian Universalist minister, and kind of where I find myself netting out spiritually these days, although not exclusive to any other part of me, is Buddhism, a kind of tradition that very much speaks to my heart. I'm also a person in long-term recovery myself. For me, that means that I have not had a drink since September 19th, 2005. And so what I'd like to talk to you today is about spirituality, and particularly mindful spirituality. And within that, kind of focusing on one word within the experience of mindfulness, which is presence. Cultivating presence, cultivating a sense of being in and with and in connection to our lives. And to do that, I thought, even though I don't have a ton of time, what I'd like to do is just guide us through a very brief mindfulness practice, if that's okay with everyone. And I always say this whenever I do whether I'm leading 30 people in mindfulness, whether I am leading a client in mindfulness, your safety comes first. If any part of this, although it is a brief practice, feels unsafe in any way, don't do it. Or investigate what it's like to feel unsafe and see if you can cultivate something within that might reground you and allow you to feel a little bit more within your experience. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you're comfortable doing so, closing your eyes. I'm going to close my eyes. Or maybe you want to leave your eyes open and bring your eyesight to a point about 6 degrees in front of you where your eyes can rest. And just start to notice in this moment, utilizing how your 5 senses are showing up. What are you aware of the space around you? What are you noticing? What are you hearing, smelling, in touch with? Even if your eyes are closed, noticing on the backs of the eyelids, might be aware of color and form, light and shadow. And so just now starting to tune in to how it is to be here in this place, how it is to take this one seat, how it is for you right now to notice that the body is being supported by whatever it is that you're seated on. And starting to tune into something now that all of us are doing, which is that we're breathing. And so just noticing briefly how it is to take an in-breath in through the nose. And then as slowly as is comfortable for you, breathing out through the mouth. And just allowing that natural cycle of breathing, whether it's fast or slow, shallow or deep, whatever is the most genuine experience of your breath right now. Just allowing that to guide you through a couple cycles of breathing in and breathing out. And when you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, opening the eyes back up. And just noticing, however it was, like, dislike, pleasant, unpleasant, how it is just to check in with our experience, with your experience in this moment. You know, mindfulness gets, in terms of the formal practices, much more developed than that, but essentially that's it. Moment by moment, noticing what's arising and allowing ourselves as best we are able to be in touch with it. So my own story, beginning at about 12 or 13 years old, when I discovered alcohol, which was the boon and the bane of my existence, come from a family in which anxiety and depression, as far as I can count, go back about 3 or 4 generations, and then it's kind of lost in the mists of time. Alcohol was my escape. The last place I wanted to be was here. I wanted to be any other place than in and with my own experience, because my experience felt so categorically awful and uncomfortable. And caught as I was, and you know how common this is in the experience of substance use disorders, I wanted to be anywhere else than here, because my brain was just awash in fear and judgment and the fundamental belief somehow that I was just an alien to this human experience. And yet, however hard I tried, I could not escape from myself. And I tried for a good, 2+ decades. I got sober at 35. I'm 51 now. One of the things that I use, and this is the preacher in me, but it's also the kind of therapist that I am. You use a lot of stories, a lot of images and metaphors. Any of you know the old children's story? I know an old lady who swallowed a fly. You don't remember that? Kind of goes through the sequence: fly, then spider, then cat, then rat, and these old stories and songs for kids get pretty bleak at the end. I know an old lady who swallowed a horse. She's dead, of course, and sadly, that does convey so often what can happen when substance use disorders just take over our lives. And although I'm beyond grateful that I'm here with all of you and a live person like we all are right now, I could see that progression in my life. And so what I needed to learn how to do was to be able to be present, was to be able to learn what is my single most favorite word. I needed to learn how to be with my experience, not flee from my experience. And indeed, that's very much what I have worked on my pastoral counseling all the time in the congregation that I started from scratch, a congregation called Wellsprings Congregation in Chester Springs. I'm now down to about 20% of the time serving there. I'm gradually kind of lowering my time there as I focus more explicitly and exclusively on psychotherapy. But that's really what the heart of the practice is with pain, with grief, with loss, with trauma, is inviting people, the folks I work with, congregants over the years, to locate ways of being with the breath and in the body to safely befriend themselves. So much of our human minds are kind of taken up by evaluation, judgment, kind of scanning the crowd. Do we fit in? Are we up? Are we down? Whereas I think so much of the mindfulness path and the path of presence is really allowing ourselves to both attend to our experience and ultimately to befriend our experience. And I know of no better aid in that than by learning to work with our breath. To me, it's not at all an accident that all of the ancient spiritual traditions, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, the same word for spirit is the same word for breath. And so I think there is something about learning to come home to the breath, whether again, fast or slow, shallow or deep, just kind of accepting ourselves as we are, and then finding some ways to kind of be with our breath that really opens up a different way of relating to our lives. I think so often in the Western world, especially in America, we think religion and spirituality is a matter of belief. my tradition and really what calls me says, actually, you scratch the surface of the word belief, you take it back about 800 years, it actually is related to the word to be love. To beloved something. That's what spirituality is all about. And so to me, spirituality is what we place our hearts on, what we place our trust into, and to take it out of the conceptual and bring it into our bodies. To me, that's where the breath and mindfulness of the body and of our thoughts and our feelings in a kind way, not a neutral way, a deeply compassionate way, is it's a way of learning how to be with our lives. To me, it is all about a way of relating. I'm recognizing I'm kind of running out of time here. To me, none of this stuff is conceptual. That's why I love the stories in it. There's a Buddhist Zen teacher named Thich Nhat Hanh who I just adore. He's coming to the end of his earthly life. I think he's 91, but he says, you know, if we approach God as a concept, we're kind of missing the boat. He says that the concept of God, if that's a word that makes sense to you, is nothing compared to kind of touching the God of non-fear, wisdom, and love. And to me, that's how I cultivate these qualities of kind of presence, being with, even if what we're with is deeply painful. And indeed, of course, that shows up so often in my work with my clients. And I do want to end with a story. This would have been about a decade ago this past spring, I was doing what's called a Vipassana Retreat. If any of you are familiar with that, it is an 8-day retreat in this case of almost entirely in silence, save for 1 or 2 meetings with the teachers, the Dharma teachers, as they're called in the tradition. 6 hours of seated silent meditation a day, 2 hours of walking meditation a day, a little bit of yoga, all meals eaten in silence. And I have to say the first half of that Vipassana retreat in here was get me out. My God, the nonsense that goes through my brain at any given moment. And then something shifted about halfway through. And I encountered a state of just complete and utter bliss. Still had arthritis in my back. My knees still hurt. It all was there, but I was able to just kind of be with the experience. And in the meditation hall, it was about 80 other people we were with. Sometimes I would just hear the tears of my fellow meditation students. Not my job to fix, not my job to control, but I was aware as we went through the week of how that experience showed up more and more, and how people were really locating an experience of their own pain and their own healing. And on the final night of that retreat, I had a dream. The primary teacher, her name was Tara Brock. And if you remember, I'm a little old, 51, Brock's candies. Some of you might recall those. I had a dream that I was reaching into a hoodie, into the pocket of the hoodie. And I was bringing out those Brock's candy hearts that we get at like Valentine's. And I was looking for a whole heart, but I couldn't find one. All I was getting was pieces of broken hearts. And I remember being really frustrated. Why can't I get a whole heart? But then in the dream, I decided to actually eat one of those hearts, and then another one. And it was the sweetest, most pure thing I've ever tasted in my life. And to me, that's the experience of a kind of presence of compassion, that when we can learn to be with and attend and befriend our lives in these kind ways, even our pain, of course, it is the gateway to our healing and to our wholeness as human beings. So that's what I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Wow, that was really amazing. Thank you so much, Ken. I think that so many of these different topics that we're talking about can be spiritual. You know, music and being with animals and art and all of these things are very spiritual paths in many ways. And I have a question for you, if you don't mind. I'd like to follow up with something. I'm thinking about my son's recovery in his early days. We did not raise our kids in any kind of organized religion. And when he was joining a 12-step program, of course, that is a pathway for many people and to seek and sustain recovery. He was reading so much about a higher power. He's like, okay, I got to get on this, and he had the opportunity very early in his recovery to go to a spiritual retreat. And he asked one of the leaders at the retreat, like, okay, am I thinking about Buddhism? And he's like, you're overthinking it, And I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that for people who maybe even had a religious background or didn't or whatever, but in their recovery are viewing things so differently. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in kind of keep it simple, seriously. I mean, I know my brain, it's constantly overthinking. It's just what it does. It's the brain I was born into this life with. And so what I trust about the presence of this path is making it simple. Recognizing, not trying to stop my brain from thinking. Good luck with that one, right? That actually, just by resisting it, is going to push back even more. But to recognize it and bring it back to what is most simple, the breath, the body. I remember early on, I was still in my internship about 5 years ago. I was working with a younger client who had a pretty heavy trauma history, and they were not even in a place where the breath was safe. And so we started to use sensory mindfulness because they were really motivated to want to connect with their experience in kind of this kinder and more compassionate way. And we were in a room with an old-fashioned clock, and they could hear the ticking of the clock. And I'm going to clean it up for you all, if that's okay, because the person was so blunt. They were just lovely the way they said it. I said, "What was that like?" And they said, "Well, when I could relate to just the clock, it actually grounded me. Brought me back into this moment, gave me a focus, gave me a way to be present with myself." And they said, from now on, my mantra, just the effing clock. Like that was a way that they learned how to come home to themselves. And again, there's so many different ways to do it. And I agree, music, arts, the way we see mindfulness is, it is a matter of perspective and recognizing that what has happened to us in our lives, the things we've suffered and the things we may have done that we're not proud of, shifting that perspective with some mindfulness and especially compassion can really open up a different way of kind of claiming the integrity of our story and then pivoting towards our most important values, the things that really do sit in and with our hearts that are waiting to be expressed. Hope I answered your question.
You did beautifully. Thank you. I want to open this up now. I'm going to stop recording.